Hi, welcome to Spec Hunter. Apple's budget MacBook may finally be making a comeback. It has been years since we last saw a MacBook that was not part of the Air or Pro series. The last one was the 12-inch MacBook, which arrived in 2015 and was updated until 2017. That laptop was discontinued in 2019, and since then Apple has focused only on the MacBook Air and MacBook Pro. Now, after 6 years, signs suggest that Apple could bring back a new entry-level MacBook. Rumors and leaks are starting to pile up, and many people believe this device is closer than expected. So, how did all of these rumors begin? Analyst Ming-Chi Kuo and the site MacRumors were among the first to notice clues. They spotted references in Apple's back-end code during the summer. These references were linked to Apple Intelligence, Apple's new AI features. What caught everyone's attention was the identifier MacBook 17.1. That identifier stood out because the last 12-inch MacBook from 2017 carried the identifier MacBook 10.1. Normally, Apple's numbering system moves up in small steps. You would expect the next model to be 11.1, not a jump to 17.1, but Apple has changed its pattern recently. For example, all Macs that shipped with M4 chips used identifiers starting with 16, the base 14-inch. MacBook Pro was labeled as 16.1, while the 15-inch MacBook Air went up to 16.13. So, if Apple is preparing an all-new category of MacBook, then starting fresh with 17.1 makes sense. This is where the story becomes even more interesting. Reports suggest that this budget MacBook may not use an M-series processor at all. Instead, it could use an A-series chip, the same kind of chip found in iPhones. More specifically, it could ship with the A18 Pro chip, the one that powers the iPhone 16 Pro models. At first, this might sound like a downgrade compared to the M-series chips used in all Macs so far, but benchmarks tell a different story. The A18 Pro's multi-core performance is close to the M1, and its single-core score can even match or beat the M3. That is surprising, because the M3 is used in Apple's current MacBook Air and MacBook Pro. On top of that, the A18 Pro also includes the AV1 decoder, the same video feature built into the M3 and M4 chips. This means that even though the A18 Pro is designed for a phone, its efficiency and raw speed could make it work well in a laptop. The amount of memory will also be important. Right now, leaks suggest either 8 GB or 16 GB of RAM. Apple could keep it at 8 GB, since the A18 Pro in iPhones has only been paired with that much so far. But there is also a good chance Apple could allow 16 GB. That's because Apple has been shifting to higher RAM requirements in order to support Apple Intelligence features. In fact, older MacBook Air models that once shipped with 8 GB were later updated by Apple to require 16 GB if you wanted to run AI features. That was unusual for Apple, but it showed how important memory has become. My guess is that this new budget MacBook may still start at 8 GB, Apple likes, to create clear separation between its product lines, and giving more memory to a cheaper device would blur the gap. The Air would need something extra to stay attractive. On the other hand, Apple could instead use design differences to separate the two models. At the moment, there are no strong leaks about what the budget MacBook will look like. But based on Apple's history, we can imagine a few possibilities. The first option is that Apple could reuse the wedge-shaped design from the M1 MacBook Air. Apple has done this before with budget devices like the iPhone SE line, which reuses older iPhone designs. Another possibility is the flat-edged design that came with the M2 MacBook Air. The design is still current, so it would not feel outdated yet. A third option is that Apple could bring back an even older style, maybe with thicker bezels and no notch. That would help keep this model feeling unique. Compared to the Air and Pro. There is also the chance that Apple will push for an ultra-thin body. Back in 2015, the 12-inch MacBook was thinner and lighter than the Air. Apple might want to repeat that formula. Some concept designs show a thinner version of the MacBook Air, almost like a hybrid between the Air and the old 12-inch MacBook. But if I had to guess, Apple will likely stick with the Air's current design. That would make sense because the MacBook Air is expected to get a full redesign around 2027 or 2028. By keeping this budget MacBook on the current design, it will look more outdated once the Air gets refreshed, which helps Apple separate the two models further. The display is another key part of the story. Reports suggest a 13-inch screen, but it likely will not be as bright as the MacBook Air. The current Air can reach 500 nits. While the older M1 Air was capped at 400, Apple could give this new MacBook the same 400 nit limit. They might even restrict it through software just to make sure the Air stays a level above. Colors could make this MacBook stand out even more. Ming-Chi Kuo has reported that the new model may come in silver, blue, pink, and yellow. These are the same colors Apple uses on its entry-level iPads. This makes sense because Apple often uses brighter, playful colors on budget devices. It helps them look fun and appealing to students and younger buyers. If this happens, Apple's lineup will look neatly organized. The budget MacBook and iPad will have bold colors. The Air models will keep subtle shades like starlight, sky blue, and midnight. And the Pro devices will stay professional with silver and black. This separation makes it clear who each device is for without Apple having to change much else. Now let's talk about ports. There are no leaks yet, but if Apple reuses the old M1 Air chassis, we can expect two USB-C ports at 10 gigabits per second. But don't expect Thunderbolt since the 18 Pro does not include a Thunderbolt controller. If Apple chooses the M2 Air design instead, then the device could come with MagSafe charging, 1 or 2 USB-C ports, and even a headphone jack. Storage is also worth considering. iPhones with the 18 Pro start at 128 gigabytes, but that is too low for a MacBook. Apple hasn't sold a MacBook with 128 gigabytes since 2019. The safe bet is that the new model will start at 256 gigabytes. But there could be a cost-cutting trick. Apple might use just one 256 gigabyte NAND chip instead of two 128 gigabyte chips. That would save money, but it would also lower storage speeds. We saw this problem with the M2 MacBook Air, which had slower read and write speeds compared to the M1 and M3 models. Battery life could be a huge selling point. Because the A18 Pro is so power efficient, this MacBook could last even longer than the Air's 18 hours. But Apple probably does not want this budget MacBook to outshine the Air. To prevent that, they might use a smaller battery or a thinner chassis, keeping the endurance impressive but not too competitive. The name is another mystery. Some think Apple could call it the MacBook Say, but I doubt it. Apple already has a simple name that works, just MacBook. The Say branding has become less important over time. The new iPhone 16, for example, was not called the Say 4. It was simply named iPhone 16. Apple seems to prefer simpler branding, so it is far more likely they will bring back the clean MacBook name. Price is perhaps the most important factor. The M4 MacBook Air starts at $999, but it is often on sale for around $849, so this budget MacBook must come in lower. Walmart has sold the M1 MacBook Air for $649 for years, and this new MacBook could take its place. A price between $649 and $799 seems likely. That would fit nicely between the $599 Mac Mini and the $999 Air, giving Apple a clear entry-level laptop option. When could it launch? According to Ming-Chi Kuo, the release may happen in late 2025 or early 2026. That timing fits well with Apple's spring events, which often highlight budget products like the iPhone, Say, or entry-level iPads. Since the M5 MacBooks are delayed until early next year, a Mac-focused spring event in 2026 seems very possible. So, could this new budget MacBook be a success? I think it has a lot of potential. The old 12-inch MacBook was thin, light, and portable, but it struggled with Intel processors. Now, with Apple Silicon, that same concept could finally work. Today, people want laptops with long battery life, smooth everyday performance, and a lower price. This MacBook could check all those boxes, of course. It won't be the best choice for heavy video editing, 3D work, or coding large projects. But for students, casual users, and anyone who just needs a reliable laptop for browsing, streaming, and everyday tasks, it could be the perfect fit. If priced right, it could even become one of the easiest Macs to recommend in years, and that wraps it up. Apple's budget MacBook may finally return, and if it does, it could be one of the most exciting Mac releases in a long time. For more updates on Apple and MacBook news, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and press the bell icon so you never miss the latest updates.